We're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Danny Nerdnick channel. I'm here today with an old friend of mine, Sastri. We went to culinary school together at CIA. As you can see behind me, that is Farkas and Hull. I was telling Sastri before we went on air, I wanted it to feel like we were at lunch back at school. I also want to point out, I don't know if you know this, it's been a decade, 10 years since we've met.
Wow.
10
Wow.
years, dude.
That's crazy. That's
Isn't
crazy.
that insane? Man, we were kids back then.
I agree.
What happened? We used to be so young. And before, you didn't have facial hair. Now you got the big old beard. Man, you look like an NFL running back.
It's the quarantine beard. The last time I tried to trim it, I had to shave all of it off, so I just stopped.
That happened to me the other night. I got out of the shower and I'm like, oh, let's just, use the buzzer, kind of trim me up a little bit, get a nice line. Zoop!
Pretty much.
The worst was I tried to do my mustache and I ended up with like a Hitler mustache. I'm standing there going like, we are not amused.
In true Dan fashion.
Like, hey man, I gotta be me. I gotta be as ridiculous and silly as possible all the time. It's the name of the game. So we are here on this very auspicious occasion. During quarantine, I myself, since March 19th of this year, have been keeping a sourdough starter. I've named it Sigourney after Sigourney Weaver in Aliens, because mother.
Yes.
And my understanding is that a lot of people are doing the same. Bread baking has become this big thing right now because nobody's got shit to do. And there was a big bread shortage or a big flour shortage in March.
Of course, because I don't think anybody anticipated the amount of flour that people were going to buy off the shelves. Mm-hmm. Like my own bakery started selling a lot of 2-pound bags of flour. Like we essentially came up with a make your own loaf of bread kit. So we'd send them like 2 pounds of flour, a little chunk of sourdough starter, and instructions on how to do it moving forward.
I bet that was a hell of a money spinner at the beginning of this thing. I bet that did really well.
It was, but while we were on lockdown, we essentially decided as a bakery not to try and make money. So we were baking about 500 to 600 loaves a day because grocery stores were still open. We did have to lay off 85% of our staff. But with a core team, we were able to do about 600 loaves a day for grocery stores, and we would donate 200 loaves a day to food shelters, food banks, old age homes. And just to be able to do that, it was like that's what made me like stick with this company for the lockdown.
In my opinion, part of hospitality, and I'm including bakeries in that, is just that hospitality. It's up to us. Like we have to make sure, because like classically speaking, you know this because we had to take history classes. Garde manger, traditionally speaking, it literally means guardians of the food. And I don't mean to get all like Avengers on you, but that's us, man. Like we are the first and only line of defense between people and food. This is it. Like when it comes to you, you're actually baking bread. You're making food affordable for people who may or may not have jobs right now, and you're making it possible for them to eat. Like you are literally being the savior of the people through bread, man.
I honestly think it stems from the fact that a lot of people, what I noticed was a lot of people are so disconnected with food. Like when lockdown hit, a lot of people were like, hold on, how am I supposed to take care of myself? How am I supposed to eat? What is cooking? So I honestly think it was a wake-up call for a lot of people to like, hey, maybe these life skills are actually necessary because I can't go to the store next door and get lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that I see more and more now, because when you're unemployed during something like this, you find yourself on social media a lot. And I go on Twitter because I like to argue with idiots, which, I mean, that's just a fact of my nature. But I see everybody posting food they've made, and 70% of it, frankly, sorry, not sorry here, it looks like shit. But we're spoiled. What are you going to do? And I'm never going to yuck anybody's yum. But like, if you put up some potatoes that are very clearly glue at this point, I'm going to give you a like, pat you on the back, and say, good job, Slugger.
Try again next time.
You get a 65. You pass for the day, but I'm very disappointed.
I am grading on effort.
Yeah, you get an F for effort. So the reason I brought you here is because I have been painstakingly researching for the last month the history of bread and its impact on us as humans, and the codification of bread, and like the provenance of each different type of bread. Like, if we have baguette here, how did it go from being a simple flatbread made of wild grain and yeast from like fruit must to being something that we consider refined and elegant? And I figured the best person to talk about this would be you. Of all the people I know, you know the most about bread.
Why, thank you, sir. I take that as a huge compliment. And bread as we know it today has come a far, far way from bread as people knew it way back when. Like, I honestly think that civilization, agriculture, and things of that nature are the foundation of bread. Like, bread is considered the staff of life. It's kind of like during Roman times, we had what is called the Reinheitsgebot in Germany.
That's the beer purity laws.
Yes, it was a beer purity law. But why did the beer purity law why was it put into practice? It was the Reinheitsgebot stated that you could only use barley as a grain for making beer at the time. This was to ensure that there wasn't price gouging for brewers to get wheat and rye, which would have caused competition with bakers, increasing the price of bread. So in order to keep bread affordable to the masses, they passed a law saying that brewers can only use barley while keeping wheat and rye solely for the bakers.
And here I am thinking it's just because the Germans like everything pure.
To an extent, yes.
But that makes so much sense. Like, so I've got this long-running joke on my podcast that the Romans, not the French, not the Italians, the ancient Romans are nearly 100% responsible for what we know as gastronomy and the culinary arts today. It's because of the Romans the French have wine. It's because of the Romans the French have the Loire Valley as what it is now. And interestingly enough, it's because of the Romans we have all of these fermented fish sauces that make Southeast Asian cuisine.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So you're mentioning that, you once again, we're linking things back to the Romans. But in my research, I found that it was the ancient Greeks, not necessarily the ancient Romans, who had such a heavy hand in creating bread as we know it today. For instance, my research turned up that the idea of a freestanding oven with doors goes back to ancient Greece. Is this true, or am I just pulling shit out of Wikipedia?
No, I think it's pretty true. In the research I have done, I have gone back to see that the whole leavening of bread, the whole making of a dough could be traced back to ancient Egypt, in fact.
I saw that too. Maybe even further back.
Recently, they found essentially what is called a dough trough from ancient Egypt, where a literal like even if you go to rural areas in Europe, you see this long wooden trough where people mixed dough with a paddle, like the first of its kind large scale mixing situation, you know?
Wow. Is this
And
Eastern Europe, Northern Europe, Western Europe?
I'm thinking like if you look at the birth of civilization to begin with, I'm thinking Mesopotamia actually, because I think that's where agriculture started. And you could even say that throughout various settlements across the world, making grain edible has been an important thing, you know? Like throughout every culture in the world, like if you look at it geographically, there are each section of the world has its go-to grain that is ingrained in its cuisine.
I
Like
see what you did there.
yes, and like in India and Asia, you have rice, different types of rice.
Like Sastri's lagging out a
In
little bit.
in
Hey,
Am I still lagging?
a little bit. You're like a half second behind. Keep going though. Keep going.
Okay. So, like, I think making grain palatable has been codified in our DNA for a very long time. For example, something that recently blew my mind is the idea of nixtamalization, because in South America you have corn, and a lot of varieties of corn is not edible, but someone figured out that if you added an alkali, which was soda ash or lime, you could make this corn edible to make tortillas. Firstly, I want to know who the hell thought I'm going to add this poisonous substance to the corn, boil it for 4 hours, and then I'm going to be able to eat it.
Well, Grandma thought she was just making some pudding. So
Yeah, yeah. So the history of bread is a really, really long one, but I'm sure that the bread back then was unleavened, hard to eat, difficult to digest. And honestly, I feel that there were people like you and me who continuously strived to make it better to reach what we have today, you know?
absolutely. I mean, isn't that how it always works? They're the people who are passionate about food, about feeding people, about learning and creating and exploring. It's not just science, even though there's a very strong argument to be made that between baking and pastry versus culinary, baking and pastry is more the science. Culinary would be more like the drunk guy trying to. Culinary is more like Jackson Pollock in terms of art. Baking and pastry is more like what they're doing at CERN right now.
I could see that.
The precision needed.
I appreciate that. So see, for me, like I started out on the savory side of things. I started out in my career on the culinary side of things. My first job was a butcher, then a line cook, etc., etc. So I wasn't a baker the entire time. But as some people have told me, I like to make my life difficult. One thing One thing that really caught me about bread is you have one chance every day to do it right. The process is so long. You have one chance every day to do it right. Like you are riding that line. One mistake, you're done. On the culinary side of things, like you make a mistake, you learn how to work around it. You learn how to make it better. You learn on the fly how to fix things. Hey, I my baker burned 30 baguettes yesterday. Guess what? We're not sending 30 baguettes out. That's just the situation, you know.
My heart just dropped hearing that. Oh,
Yeah, it happened.
I bet that baker went home going, oh man, I had the worst day today. Oh, I fucked that. I hope they don't come in the next day, or I guess that'd be today or tomorrow. Are you guys closed today?
My bakery closes 2 days a year.
Oh shit! Thank
We
Christmas, New Year's.
Christmas, Thanksgiving.
That actually, yeah. Speaking of, by the way, if you and Nancy have nothing to do for Thanksgiving this year, we're going to be in Vermont. You're only a couple hours away.
I
Come hang
will
out.
I will certainly look into it for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Looping back. That's friend
Yeah.
stuff. We'll take care of that over text later.
Of course.
I've been taking notes on this legal pad. There's some things I actually wanted to bring up and ask you about. So we were talking about Mesopotamia before.
Yeah.
People, like you were saying, people consider the Fertile Crescent, modern day Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, and Egypt, kind of like the southeastern region of Turkey and the western fringes of Iran, like that Fertile Crescent area. People consider that the cradle of civilization because that's where we started farming, and that's when we really started to clear, cultivate, and modify vegetation. So with that kind of land clearing, domestication of plants, and first remnants of human settlement and civilization, about how long after, or was it concurrent with that, did bread become the staple food? Or was bread a staple food even before then?
I think around that time when people realized the ease of growing grain and the ease at which, see, bread is one of those things that once baked, especially if it's unleavened, it keeps for longer than most other food without refrigeration.
That's true.
So it is a form of sustenance that requires minimal upkeep after it's being made. And if you look at present day Fertile Crescent area and what bread is predominantly eaten there is unleavened. It's unleavened or slightly leavened flatbread.
So like pita.
Like pita, like lavash.
I love lavash.
And a lot of other things of that nature. So you're essentially looking at places that may have incorporated the growing of grain, the harvesting of grain, the milling of grain into their to become an integral part of their diet.
So the development of bread as we know it, as it became not only a hallmark, a benchmark food for society, but also integral in religious life.
Of course.
That, coupled with the domestication of animals and vegetation, all of that together, everything kind of evolved side by side by side. Then it wasn't one than the other. It was all together.
Yes. I don't think that civilization followed a linear timeline. I think the more you brought people together, multiple people had different ideas that they tried to incorporate. And we as a species have done better for ourselves within a community. So someone figured out how to grow a grain really well. Someone figured out a method of how to mill this grain, and someone figured out, hey, if I mix this much grain with this much water and add a little bit of salt, guess what? I have bread. So this also could have started the delineation of society in terms of profession, which is why so when with last names like Miller and Baker, essentially that signifies your working class. Like your last name is Miller because someone in your family was a miller, Someone in your family milled flour. Your last name is Baker because someone was a baker.
Personal experience. My last name is Schwartz. In German, Schwarz means black. My family, going back to Germany, blacksmiths.
There we go. There we go.
Interesting. That's a very cool point. It's again, food is central to the development of the human species. Like you were saying, if someone develops a way to mill grain and another person develops a way to make this ingredient more palatable or not poisonous, and this guy figured out a way to purify water, and everybody gets together, great things happen. We are such a social species. We require other people. And that kind of loops back to what's going on right now. Why this call is so important for me. You're one of the first other people I've seen in months, man. I've seen my family for the last 6 months. Yours is one of the first faces I've seen.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But,
and I certainly think that we as a community, like for me, like, so the reason I started this job was to learn the art of milling. I decided to make my life harder because I wanted to learn how to mill flour. And the bakery I work at now, we mill about 70 to 75% of our whole grain in-house.
Holy crap.
And yeah, it's about 350 pounds of grain that's milled into flour on a daily basis.
How big is your facility?
It's pretty large.
Dope.
It's pretty large, but it's still not enough. We're running out of space.
That'll happen.
Yeah. So for me, the concept of milling was important, and so now you've heard about the term breaking bread with people. I think that's really important because bread was the final product that you could bring the community of farmers that grew your grain, millers that milled your grain, and bakers that baked your bread all together, and they sat down at a table and broke bread, their final product, their like fruit of all their labor, you know?
Absolutely. I actually have a note related to that. Let's see. There was an author, Diphilus, Diphilus. I swear, I promise this all relates. He said that bread made of wheat as compared with that made of barley is more nourishing, more digestible, and in every way superior. So that's the quote. But in Rome, in Roman times, right here, sorry, my handwriting is terrible. The essentiality of bread was reflected by the name of the meal, which was opson, O-P-S-O-N, or condiment, i.e., bread's accompaniment. So like you're saying, breaking bread is the important thing. It was the central part of a meal, which means if you're sitting down with someone and breaking bread with them, that's the thing you're all there for, which puts you at a common purpose.
Exactly. That is completely true. And it's a really interesting fact. Like now we talked about all these people trying to make the process of bread efficient, but we as a species today have taken it to the other extreme. We have made the process too efficient.
Yes. Let's see. What's the name of? I got a name of the method here. Oh, come on now. I'm dumb. I should have had the Chorleywood method.
That's familiar. I haven't really. It's been a while since I've come across that term. Could you please explain it to me?
So the Chorleywood bread process is using like vats, tanks to ferment bread. What it does is it controls the mechanical, or this used the intense mechanical working of dough and control of gases touching the dough to dramatically reduce the fermentation period and the time taken to produce a loaf at the expense of both taste and nutrition. This is the method that I guess predated like the mass production of white bread.
Of course.
So is this the type of thing that you're talking about?
Yes, because Because we tried to make everything efficient. So the farmers tried to grow the most efficient grain to sell the most amount of grain. Millers moved away from stone milling to roller milling, which dramatically reduces the health effects and the bioavailability of the health benefits of bread. Bakers wanted bread to be easier to work, flour to be easier to work with, so you sifted all the bran out. You sifted all the bran and germ out to get a nice soft flour that made a beautiful loaf of bread. And then you have an industrial process where you've essentially, okay, this is a loaf of bread. This is quote unquote tasty, but how far away have we gotten from the initial process? Two, we've reached a point where gluten intolerances and gluten allergies are so rampant that people have been vilifying bread for a really long time. And if you actually do the research, it is because of these industrial processes that we have come so far that bread as we know it today is not digestible to a large section of people, which takes away from the reason bread existed in the first place.
Do you think that that's because we've taken the nutritious bits out of the flour, like removing the wheat germ, removing the parts of the grain that are like really beneficial
in the need for efficiency?
So once again, the human race decided, let's make this quicker, and just took a gun, aimed it right at their big toe, and pulled the trigger a bunch.
Yep.
We're stupid, man. We're just a bunch of fucking monkeys wearing pants.
But I think that bread is having its renaissance, especially in the US.
Agreed. Forcibly, but it's happening.
So when I worked in Germany for a bit, I went to Germany because I wanted to see what bread was like. And I was amazed at the stark difference of quality in bread. For example, in the US, we have grocery store Wonder Bread and we have a Tartine country loaf. Two things that are extremely wide apart. Like, you have people standing in line to go get a Tartine country loaf. And you can go to any grocery store and get a loaf of Wonder Bread. That wide range of bread quality does not exist in Germany. You can't open a Tartine in Germany because even at the grocery store level, you have people back there mixing the dough, shaping the dough by hand, creating loaves of bread for a grocery store. So even if you go to the grocery store in Berlin, you are getting a really high quality loaf of bread.
So where we as Americans we look at Whole Foods as the expensive alternative to the grocery store. But the quality that Whole Foods provides is the base level in Europe.
Of course.
Where the fuck did we go wrong?
Like, there is no need for a Tartine in Germany. They don't need a Tartine in Germany.
Oh man. And with beer laws, shit. You get a Dunkel beer, have a little bit of like raspberry syrup put in it.
Exactly.
And I don't even like beer.
Yeah, and it's that wide demarcation of like and honestly, people in Europe don't even understand why does Tartine exist? Like why is this a thing? Like, bread's good if it ain't broke, don't fix it, like they realized where to stop. I think that's the thing. Someone was like, hey guys, I think we have taken the nutritional quality and ruined bread. How about we take a couple steps back?
We put the bread on a motorcycle on jets. We put the bread on a jet ski, put a ramp in the ocean. There's a bunch of sharks, and whoop, bread went right over the sharks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. and someone decided that, okay, we might have moved it too far, so let's dial it back a scotch, you know. And that was very interesting because I never really understood that mentality, because at that point all I knew about bread baking was what was going on in this country. And for me it was a great learning experience as to how fundamental the bread experience is to a lot of people. like for us in America, we like a good loaf of bread is an event. In Europe, it's not.
It's just
A
lunch.
good loaf of bread is always present.
Huh. Well, I guess it's up to our generation of culinary people, of hospitality people, to impress upon the public with our vocal, loud minority of people who love food to the point of obsession, where we need to take a stand and say, guys, put down the Wonder Bread. I got this baguette that's going to blow your nuts off.
But then we come to the problem of economies of scale, my friend.
That's true.
Wonder Bread, what? It's $2. I'm okay. Personally, I have never bought a loaf of Wonder Bread in my life.
Lucky.
So, what is it? $2 a loaf?
About that.
But now, if you look into the labor involved on making a good quality loaf of bread, the only way you're able to pay your people, make your stuff, and things like that are like the cost of the loaf of bread is going to increase. And which is why I do what I do, because I believe that I work in a niche which is high volume artisan baking. Like, a lot of our clients are Whole Foods in the area. And for me, I believe if we make good bread accessible to more people understand what good bread is and are willing to take on some of that cost, which makes it easier on us as bakers to make good bread accessible to even more people.
So by keeping the high level bakery to the people who are truly experts at it, it in essence increases availability and decreases price.
That we're trying to apply the economies of scale to high volume artisan bread. And it's again a fine line on the production aspect of things, is how far do you take the industrialization process?
Well, and looping back to what you said before, kind of paraphrasing that, at what point do you lose the soul of the bread? I mean, when, in your opinion, what is the point in the economics of scale? What's the high end of the scale that would remove the soul from the bread and make it nutritionally and ethically bankrupt?
I believe that if machines touch the bread more than hands do, it is a mechanical process.
100%. Totally on board with that.
So
does that include a dough hook?
If you look at the entire process, the mix, the milling, the mixing, the shaping, the baking, if throughout that entire process machines touch the bread more than hands touch the bread in the sum total of things, then it's a mechanical process.
So it's like the 4 hours that food can be out. It's not 4 hours from the time you take it out of the fridge. It's 4 hours entirely.
Exactly. So I can use the dough hook to make my dough, but do I still have 5 people on the table shaping each loaf? Or am I throwing my dough into a machine and then putting it on a sheet pan?
Is it extruding it, or are you forming it?
Exactly.
Okay, I gotcha. Totally understand.
Because the person I worked with made a really great comment. He's like, bread is one of those things that's great because you as a human are putting your energy into a loaf of bread. It's a very hippie, oh my god, really great concept, but you as a human are putting your energy into a loaf of bread. If you're having a bad day, your bread's not going to be that great because you're not putting positive energy into your bread. So try to come to work in a more positive mindset.
You know, I find when I have long process meats, like long form cooking, long cooking time meats, like when I
Yeah.
slow roast a pork shoulder or I make ribs or I do a brisket. If me too, same team, bro.
I apologize.
No, dude, I totally get it. I did not sleep last night. Like I didn't sleep well at all. Uh, Pandemic stress.
Yeah.
If you cook something over a long period of time, if the process requires a lot of energy, I'm totally with it. You can taste when something has been made with love and when the person is just totally into it versus when it was just slapped onto a plate. Like you
Yep.
can tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that certainly ties into our entire conversation about bread, its history, and its codification. An interesting source of bread history.
I'm gonna write this one down.
Yeah, an interesting source is, so when I was working in Seattle and doing a lot of bread research, they went to art museums around the world and cataloged every museum photo with bread in it,
Interesting.
because there were a lot of artists that used bread as a still life subject, and that actually helped us try and figure out how far does bread go back, how far does the importance of bread go back, and what did bread look like at that point in time. Something as bakers we would certainly not think of, like, I'm going to look at an art portrait to see what bread looked at that time. And one great project we did was we took one of these paintings and actually created the entire still life of bread in reality.
I got to hear more. You got to tell the story.
So I forget what painting it was, but there was this Italian painting, which was a very,
Of course, it's the Italians.
of course, and it was a very extravagant table, a very extravagant banquet table, and someone sat and painted that entire thing. It had a lot of loaves of bread, these beautiful, like these old school like meats and things like that. And just on a whim, like, let's try and recreate that table. Let's recreate that painting in reality.
Damn. How'd it go? Did you guys
It
end
went
up
pretty well. Like, the photographs came out pretty damn well.
Can you shoot me one of those pictures so I can post them with my blog post?
I actually can't, because any and all, like, again, as I told you, I did sign an NDA with the company. So any and all research, any and all data, any and all pictures are not mine to give out.
Sastri actually works for the CIA, not the Culinary Institute, the Central Intelligence Agency bread division. It's very important. We're trying to solve bread crimes all over the world, make bread perfect.
Hey, and the most amount of bread crimes happen right here in the States, my friend.
Well, I think we're talking about a different kind of bread.
Like, have you ever tried to figure out how Wonder Bread is made?
I just assumed it congealed out of nowhere.
So they take a batter, put a yeast flavoring in it, put it in a large autoclave. Do you know what an autoclave is?
Please enlighten me.
So it is essentially a pressure cooker the size of a train car.
So it sounds like something that should be in the Tower of London circa medieval times. Sounds like a torture device.
No, it's essentially a large, to make canned goods and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
You put stuff, you put it at reduced atmosphere packaging and things like that. So someone figured out that if you take a batter and put it in a pressurized container and pull a half atmosphere pressure on it, reduce the pressure, the air bubbles inside that immediately enlarge, increasing it in size.
I think this is like an advancement of the Chorleywood method, which we were talking about before.
Of course. So essentially, someone put a bunch of loaves in an autoclave, pulled a half atmosphere pressure, which caused the batter to rise, and then it is flash baked for 45 seconds.
No wonder they call it Wonder Bread. That is a scientific wonder.
Oh, of course. Like, from a scientific point of view, it is freaking genius. Like, from an engineering standpoint, from a like I don't mean to diss Wonder Bread, but in its day, in its time, to be able to get sustenance out to so many people in an affordable manner, which was just after the Depression, man, that was freaking amazing. Like,
absolutely,
you cannot take that away from them. To be able to get bread on the breakfast table of every American, have it be affordable, have it be supremely consistent, to the point that every single American has a nostalgic memory of what a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or what a grilled cheese is. And you cannot deviate from that.
Yeah.
Like, have you like would you ever consider eating an artisan PB&J?
You broke up just a little bit.
Would you ever consider eating an artisan PB&J?
100%.
But have you ever made a PB&J on a crusty sourdough loaf? Does it have the same? Does it trigger the same nostalgic memories as peanut butter and grape jelly on Wonder Bread?
So I actually, funny you bring this up, because I did a side-by-side about 3 weeks ago with a loaf of bread. I think I sent you a picture of it.
Yeah, pretty good.
I did PB&J on a baguette, thin one, cut it in half, cut off the edges, made a piece about yay big, and I did a PB&J, and then I had potato bread, like grocery store potato bread, which is, I hate to say this, is one of my favorite things. Makes a perfect turkey sandwich. And I made a PB&J. And frankly, the store-bought potato bread PB&J was just better. It was easier to eat. My jaw was less tired after chewing it.
Exactly.
And it was just there and gone.
But then again, would you use store-bought potato bread to dip in your soup and eat it with your soup? No, that's when you want a baguette, don't you?
100%. Or a lovely brioche roll.
Oof. Yes.
French onion soup. Take some of that baguette that we were talking about, stale it overnight.
Of course.
A little cheese.
Ooh. A little cheese? No. You're not supposed to be able to see the soup.
See, I think we have different definitions of a little. Like when I say a little, I think you're thinking of sprinkling. I'm thinking like half the bag.
Okay, cool. Then we're on the same page. So.
This Dablung is brought to you by the last 20-something weeks. Oh, man. Yeah, okay. Something just flipped. I think it was a pair of tweezers, and now my hand hurts.
I am
no
sorry.
holes. We're good. Okay, so looping back. I brought you on to talk about bread.
Yes.
And let's talk about bread. What are your 3 favorite types of bread that you have ever consumed in your life?
Oh my God. That's a hard one, man. Like,
I ask the tough questions.
That's a hard one. I think my first ever baguette, which was in the hallowed halls of the CIA, by the way. Like, bread was not a thing on my radar until I came to the CIA. Am I there?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay. I essentially came to the CIA to be a pastry chef. I wanted to do restaurant production pastries, all those fancy little mousse and with the ice cream, and then bread class happened, and I'm like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. So I think the first would be a baguette. It's simple. It's a taste, flavor, experience, memory that I cannot forget. Like, so for my focal experiences on food, I always take back to what Anthony Bourdain said. Like, have you ever read that chapter where he talks about the first time you ever ate an oyster?
Actually, I'm doing some research for a podcast episode. I can't really talk about it, but suffice it to say, I am reading Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, and I am rereading, uh, was it Kitchen Confidential? I think that's the book that's from.
I think it's either Kitchen Confidential or Medium Raw, one of them.
Yeah, man. Yeah, dude. And he talks about how briny it was, and it was like this weird, slimy thing, but at the same time, it was just so different than anything he'd ever had. And it lit a fire inside of him.
Yeah, and it so I when I approach food with it takes me back.
Right?
Yeah. So when I approach food, for me, these focal memories are certainly one of those things about bread. So I think, yeah, my first baguette in Bake Shop 6 at the CIA is certainly one of my favorite things. Um, the first time I ate a pretzel, first time I ate a pretzel, the first time I ate a pretzel in Germany. Those two things, like, you can't really get away from that. And I was at a restaurant in Boston called Little Donkey, and my wife and me and one of her friends, we essentially ordered the entire menu. So they had this beautiful course in a small little cast iron skillet pan. They had 6 Parker House rolls that were fresh baked that came out to the table. Now, I took a bite into one of these Parker House rolls, and there was a filling of Chinese sausage in it. Mind blown.
Oh, man.
So if I were to say my 3 most memorable experiences of bread, those would be the 3. Though my first actual bread baking job, every Wednesday we would do this pumpkin seed cheddar loaf. And
Everybody in Vermont has just gone, you had my interest, or now you had my attention, but now you have my interest.
yeah. It was a pumpkin seed cheddar loaf, and instead of shredding the cheese as you normally would, they had cubes of cheddar in there. So now when the bread baked and you cut a slice, you get these cheese tunnels that were inside the bread. And oh my God. Oh my God. Everyone deserves a cheese tunnel in their lives.
That's going to be the new t-shirt, DannyNerdnick.com. Everybody deserves a cheese tunnel in their life. Sastri will be getting 25% of the proceeds.
Perfect. Thank you. And it's great because the bakery I work at now, we do a Vermont cheddar cheese loaf, which is essentially a sourdough with cubes of cheddar in it. So you cut that bad boy open and you got cheese tunnels, man.
I bet that makes a phenomenal ham sandwich or turkey sandwich.
It makes a phenomenal grilled cheese.
Well, I didn't want to be a basic bitch about it.
Hey, you cannot knock a good grilled cheese.
You're absolutely right. 100%.
A good grilled cheese takes skill, man.
Oh, that's okay. That is an indisputable fact. 100%. And most people who make grilled cheeses aren't even making grilled cheese. They're making a cheese melt. It's true.
Well, yes, because a grilled cheese can only contain bread, condiment, and cheese.
Also, it needs to be cooked in a pan with a little bit of butter.
Of course.
Can't be done in the toaster. Can't be done under a broiler.
Oh,
Can't be done with a blowtorch, even though that's the most fun way to make a grilled cheese.
Yes, I agree. And yeah, so that would be my 3 bread experiences. One thing I would like to share to you is
Please.
the moment I realized that I wanted to be a bread baker. So this was my first job, and as usual, working overnights. We had classical music playing all night because it was a Thursday and it was the head baker's day to choose the music. Everyone had days that they could choose the music. By the way, it was very democratic, which is great.
Love that.
And it was the head baker's day to choose music, so it was essentially 8.5 hours of just classical music playing. Which, hey, I'm fine with that now. And I pull about 400 loaves out of the oven, and they're on the cooling rack, and I wheel the cooling rack into the cooling room because you need a cooling room, obviously. And the head baker turns the radio off completely, and he beckons me to come into the cooling room. So when you take bread out of the oven, the crust of the bread, once it hits cold air, starts to contract. And the next time you bake a loaf of bread, actually look for this, Dan. So the moment you take a bread out of the oven, if you listen to it, it slowly crackles. Like there is this very ASMR, like beautiful crackling of the loaf, of the crust contracting of bread. And when you amplify that with the 400 loaves I just took out the oven, it is this beautiful symphony. And he looks at me, this very, very old German baker. He's like, "This is called chanson de pain," which translates to song of the bread. And that was the moment I realized that this feeling is what I'm going to chase for the rest of my life. And you can tell it's true because telling you right now, I have goosebumps. Every single time I tell this story, it is frisian, man.
Wow.
Like, it was one of those fundamental experiences where you're like, I can't describe why it makes me feel the emotions I do, but it did. And for me, that was it. That was that. It was 3:20 in the morning on a Friday, and I remember that moment vividly. I can remember the paint peeling off the corner in the cooling room, the really old racks of bread, and yeah, that was the moment I decided that bread was my calling.
You touched creation in that moment.
Almost.
That's
Like,
gorgeous. That like I too have goosebumps right now.
yeah.
And also, you can see the remains of a little burn here from a half hotel or half sheet.
That's yeah.
Man, that's beautiful. Like that's exactly what I was hoping for when I asked you to come on, man. Like this is the type of stuff I want to talk to people about. And when it comes from food, when it's something that like really touches someone's soul like that, it's a beautiful thing. Can you give me the term one more time?
Chanson de pain.
Chanson de pain.
Song of bread.
Song of bread. That
And
sounds like that's the name of your autobiography.
I agree. Hell, that's what I want to name my bakery at some point.
You have free advertising here whenever you want.
And you have free bread whenever you want.
I just need like 2 pain au chocolat a week and I'll be fine.
A week? A day?
Yeah, man, I'm trying to lose weight.
Huh?
I'm trying to lose weight.
Man, I feel like I came into the food industry because I loved food, but I can't really afford it on the consumer end of things, so learn how to make it, right?
Dude, it sucks. Like I graduated from CAA and every day I'd be making something really elegant and fabulous and different and new. And then I graduate and it's like, ramen again? Oh, okay. Where's the duck confit? Where's the foie gras? Can I get some goddamn Savruga caviar in this fucking hovel, please? I know this is a studio apartment in the shittiest part of Manhattan.
But here's the thing, like I'm sure that when you actually had the time and cooked a great meal, it brought life to that apartment.
Well, I mean, that's also a lie. I never lived in Manhattan. I live in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Lived, past tense. But yeah, you're absolutely right. When you cook something, even if it's just fundamental, basic skills one type stuff, if you cook it and you make it beautiful and perfect and you put your love and energy into it, man, it's going to be, like you said, it's going to breathe life into it.
Of course, of course.
Any parting thoughts, my friend?
Did you have any questions? It feels like we have gone off topic a lot as to your initial expectations of this conversation about the history and codification of bread, but
And this is exactly what I was hoping for. You start with a jumping off point and you just go down the road and you see where it leads you. Because this is exactly what, and I'm overplaying my hand here, what part 2 of my bread series is going to be about: the cultural ramifications and the cultural impact of bread on human society. So we went from the history of bread to why it's important as humans.
like that topic has been the thesis of many an anthropology PhD students, my friend.
And I'm trying to compress it all down into an hour of slightly funny, mostly cheesy, fun stuff. What can I say? I like to make my life more difficult.
Hey, of course, and we're going back to something we said earlier. You are trying to make this concept more accessible to people.
Absolutely.
Because it's only people like you or me that would read an anthropology paper on the cultural ramifications of bread, but someone needs to make it palatable to the rest of the masses, you know?
Absolutely. Like if we're the only people who know what the fuck starch gelatinization is, I think that's a bad thing.
I agree. I completely agree.
And they'll rue the day they didn't know it.
Oh my god. I had to face palm that pun, by the way.
I was really hoping for that.
That's an interesting thing because I am right now, like tomorrow, I have a tasting for a challah recipe that I have been developing recently, where I am using a Japanese technique to make challah better.
Japanese food. Jushi?
Might work.
Hebrushi.
Hebrushi. There we go.
It's funny, man. My sister makes challah every Friday.
That's beautiful.
That's fun. I hope she doesn't watch this. It's not moist enough. It's a little bit dry.
That's the problem with most. So that's why I use Japanese technique to ensure the moisture stays in there for more than 3 days.
Okay, when you come visit, you're gonna have to show her what's up for real.
Actually, just send me your address. I'll try and ensure that you get a loaf for Rosh Hashanah.
Oh man, thank you. Holy
no,
shit.
like for me, like I might not never have celebrated Rosh Hashanah, but have I made challah for Rosh Hashanah? Oh my lord! But
I'll be making matzo ball soup. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I'll overnight you a frozen quart.
That would be perfect. So I would certainly love to send you a loaf of Rosh Hashanah challah.
I love it. All right, man. Stay in touch. Shoot me a text. I'll link you the episode as soon as it goes up. I'm super excited for it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh no, thank you so much for having me. I was really excited when you reached out. Like it's been a long time, and
since Chumley's.
Of course.
They closed.
Oh wow. Sorry to hear that.
No, man, I outlasted another restaurant. They want to fire me, that's fine. I'm gonna outlast them. That's just how it works.
Exactly. And
I can never be killed.
Keep baking bread, man. Your bread's looking better and better. So keep at it. Okay? Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you have anything you want to plug? Any social media, any YouTube channel, any big things coming up you want to talk about?
Not really. I am I am so focused at work right now. I don't really have time for other things.
You want to plug your bakery?
Seven Stars Bakery in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. We have 4 locations in the Rhode Island area, and we supply bread to most of the Whole Foods in Massachusetts and Rhode Island.
Badass. 7-Star Bakery, you said?
7 Stars Bakery.
7 Stars Bakery. All right. If you're in New England, anywhere near a 7 Stars Bakery, if you're near Pawtucket, Rhode Island, if you're near Massachusetts, go say hi to Sastri. Go get some bread. It's all made with love. You can find me on YouTube. Just search Danny Nerdnick. SoundCloud.com/Danny_Nerdnick. Facebook, find Danny Nerdnick. On Reddit, follow me, eatribs_listen2fish, PHISH, like the band. And follow me on Instagram at the same eatribs_listen2fish. Catch you guys later. Sastri, thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you for having me, Dan.
Always remember, never forget, don't do anything I wouldn't do, but if you do, do it well. Catch you on the flippy.
Take care. Have a good one.
You too.